Welcome to Next Gen Mentoring Forum. The Next Gen Mentoring Forum series is to empower, educate, and illuminate individuals who are in or interested in the financial planning profession. At each forum, an expert will discuss a topic in the field of financial planning with the purpose of inspiring critical thoughts and discussions. In today's session, I have the honor to interview Dominique J, Henderson Jr. on the topic of why should you consider a career in financial planning. My name is Dr. Chia-Li. I am an assistant professor and director of financial planning program at California Lutheran University. I am a certified financial planning professional, and as well as maintaining an active financial planning practice specializing in succession program management at Value Growth Institute. I'm very honored today to have Dom Henderson Jr. Dom actually began the service in the financial industry back in 1998. Ever since the elementary school, he knew he had a mission to help people win with their money. Now, professionally, Dom has spent over 2 decades in the financial services. And prior to founding his registered investment advisory firm, DJH Capital Management in 2016, he spent years in institutional fixed income trading circles, real estate, and the back office of one of Dallas' premier hedge fund managers. Now, as 2 times founder, Dom spends his time helping both consumer and providers of financial services. Now, DJH Capital Management focuses on helping clients to make the bigger and better decision with their money, while the Jumpstart Coaching Lab educates and coaches the next gen of the financial professionals to serve the growing group of individuals seeking financial advice. Now, Dom has been featured in US News, World Report, Yahoo, GoBankingRates.com, and Investopedia Investor Insights. He was also named as one of Investopedia's 100 top financial advisors in 2021. Now, he hosts the Conversations for Financial Professionals podcast dedicated to helping both consumers and providers of financial services by shaping the next generation of the financial advice. Dom holds a master in securities analysis and portfolio management from Creighton University, and he is a certified financial planning practitioner. So welcome, Dom. This is quite an exciting and honored time for me to catch up with you. Before we jump off to too much questions, my very first question was, where did you grow up? And how does that actually shape who you are and what your success look like today? So kind of 3 questions in one sentence.
You gave me the Oprah threesome, the question after question after question. Well, great to be here. Great to be making this deposit into your audience. I love to do this stuff, Dr. Jen. I think, so long story short, I'm the product of a military family. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings that got tagged along with my dad for 22 years around the US, including Hawaii, where I graduated from. So I think, and I was just actually saying this the other day to someone. So, there's a lot of social constructs in our society today that are, kind of dated and Byzantine. And I think a lot of awareness has come to that in the last few years, especially in this industry with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what I would say about my upbringing, to your point or to your question, is that being a military child, I did not have the luxury of growing up and not looking at everybody as a potential friend. It just you didn't have a lot of choices. So
it's actually excellent training, right?
Yeah. So my outlook on people group differences, ethnicity differences. It's probably a little different perspective than most. And I think it's really helped me have a broader perspective with no matter who I work with, whether they're, same-sex couples or whatever. I don't have any judgment or filters, because a large part of my life was spent every 2 or 3 years finding a different set of friends. So I think that that shapes a lot of who I am today.
And I think that, and I don't know if that holds true to you with that kind of upbringing, was that lots of time when I met with someone who grew up in a military environment, if you will, and there's a terminology that I heard. This was several years ago. I was out in one of the bases in Japan for a contract work, and I learned a terminology called third culture, which basically was told that, you are American, but you live in a different country, but then you're not quite American culture, you're not quite their culture either. So I have this third culture. And I think that third culture, the more and more people that I found that have that kind of experience, oftentimes are very much so adaptable, very flexible, and make friends easily because of the fact that you have that opportunity of making, like you said, making new sets of friends every 2 years, sometimes even faster. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that probably gave you a very solid foundation in terms of what you wanted to do to help people. Now, as I was looking at your website, or one of the blog, if you will, and I was fascinated about learning this acronym REAL, and I couldn't help laughing about it. But tell us about what is REAL and what inspired you to come up with this, coin this particular acronym.
It's an amalgamation of a lot of different ideas and thoughts. I think at the end of the day, I probably want to be remembered as a thinker. Not that I claim some type of genius around something. Often I just put people that are smarter than me in the room, including my wife of 25 years almost. More about her later.
I totally get that. I always tell my husband that he's smarter than me. Get that?
Okay. Yeah, you're feeding the ego.
All right,
there.
So
okay.
You're smarter than me. Right, I get that.
But what I would say is REAL. So let's just talk about the acronym and then maybe opine on it just a little bit. So REAL stands for relatable, empathetic, attentive listening. Because at this point, when I started thinking about this concept is really probably like 4 years ago. So right after I left working for someone and then started my own. And so, you're always kind of thinking about, at least for me as a financial advice provider, is like, what's going to help move the needle with clients? Like, people come to you and they have these money goals, and sometimes they're all over the place. Sometimes they're not even able to articulate them. And you're like, what they really want is transformation. They may not be saying that, but that's what they want. And I was like, well, how could I develop a, MO, modus operandi, if you will, of what I need to be taking into a mindset that I need to be taking into a meeting dealing with a client. And so that's where that acronym came from. And, a lot of Bob Veras and Carl Richards and Kitsis and George Kinder and Bob Wagner and all these different, giants of the industry that have come before me with other ideas have been weaved into that mosaic of REAL. So,
and I think that one of the biggest challenge, and you probably heard me and Sandra talk about this, is it is really easy for advisors where we are trained to give answer, but the doctors were trained to ask questions, right? And I think that in this acronym REAL here is, obviously we have that component of listening, but I think that oftentimes we don't necessarily have the empathy of listening of what the client's actually telling us. Last night I was teaching a financial behavioral class, and I was talking about, I don't know if you're a fan of Renee Brown. I just read his recent book. she identified 76 different emotions coming through. And as I was reading through that book, and I realized how little I can describe client's emotion, left alone my emotion. And so as we listen to the clients, are we ever able to sense what the clients are telling us? So I think that this is quite, even though it's a very simple analogy of it, but learning, detecting emotion, learning, detecting biases is going to help us give better advice, if you will. And I personally don't believe anyone can influence or move people to do things. I really think that we have to drive the client to a point that they have to self-conclude. And without their buying, they probably won't do too much. And that probably will be a waste of their time and our time. So thank you so much for explaining the acronym of REAL. I understand that you 2-time startup and you have this Jumpstart Coaching Lab. Can you tell us what inspired you to do this? This is a phenomenal type of service that you're providing. Tell us what inspired you and who do you actually help through this service?
Yeah, I think I don't want to, I'll be 46 in a week, and I don't want to bore an audience that's probably half my age. I'm cognizant of that. So I want to get to the good stuff. So thank you for asking me that. It's funny, you know, two evolutions are really the genesis of Jumpstart, and it's not any more complicated than this. And my audience knows this story, but so the first evolution and idea I had, and this is just for anybody that's interested in financial services or watching this, that's thinking about innovation, right? So the first thing was allow margin for yourself to think, because that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about how I left a pretty good paying job with an RIA, but no room for upward mobility. And when I started my firm, I was like, I don't want to be another guy that just opened up another firm and is not really making any impact. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of RIAs. I think we have too many of them, to be honest. So like, how could I actually make a difference? And so I started looking at the trends of the industry. And my first aha was, you know what? We need to be on video. Like, nobody's on video as a financial advisor. So that was my first aha. And so I invested in that. And when I invested into that, my second aha came, which was actually from my wife, who I told you is smarter than me. She was like, so let me get this straight. You are trying to get people to trust you with their money, but you're not showing your face. And because I was doing everything like behind a PowerPoint and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to get on video, real video, not just, you know, talking head type of stuff. So those two things set in motion and investing in a video coach, starting a YouTube channel, and creating videos that I didn't agree with, but since I was paying somebody every month for advice that wasn't my own, I got out of my own head and I just did it. So that's another free bit of knowledge. Sometimes, you know, your best ideas come from other people. But I'll say all that to say, long story short, is we started doing videos and we got traction on a particular video, which was Day in the Life of Financial Advisor. And from that, a lot of people just start asking me questions. And I ended up creating a whole community around it for a couple of reasons. The first of it is I'm only one person and I couldn't keep on answering the same question over and over again. So I was like, why don't we have a library of content for people to access whenever they want to, when I'm asleep or when I'm taking time with my family or whatever. And so that's how the YouTube channel grew. And from that, the next natural step was like, we need to have a place for these people to kind of congregate and get, let's call it the next level, next evolution, be able to engage and, you know, have a community. So that was really how Jumpstart started. And we've made several changes and evolutions. I'm never afraid to blow it up and start from scratch if I think it's going to be having a better longer term impact.
It's such an interesting thing. There's several things that you mentioned. You hire a video coach. And I totally get that, because, you know, at the very beginning, nobody really know what the content's supposed to be out there. You do whatever your coach tell you to do, but naturally they do know what they're talking about. And so it sounds to me that Jumpstart Coaching kind of group over time, and who are actually in your tribe, if you will, because you just developed
so
this tribe with all these folks in
there's
there.
really there's three paths that I have noticed over the 3 or so years that I've done this for research. What a lot of people don't know is while I was running my RIA, I partnered with a advisory, a marketing firm, 2 advisors for about 18 months. And so I got to talk to small advisors, big advisors for a long time and heard their pains and stuff like that, that came into some of the decision too, but I digress a little bit. But anyways, the people that I've seen come through that I think that I can have the most impact, or that Jumpstart can have the most impact on, fall into 3 categories. The first category is, I don't know what I'm doing. I just think I like finances and I want to find out about this career. I get a lot of those people. They may be, first, second, third year college graduate, whatever, or they may be, one of my oldest clients is 56 years old and left, now this is his encore career. So I get the gamut on that. It's just basically, what are my next steps? And they're really, really new. Then we get people that have had some type of disposition towards this for whatever reason, influences, mentorships, whatever, and they're already on a path like CFP. And so they're studying in somebody's program. They know what they want to do. They've done internships, and ideally they want to find somewhere to work right afterwards. They want to plug into an RIA or whatever. They're asking me about different opportunities with, the different captive insurances or whatever. And then the last person that has come on, really, I mean, just probably not really by design, but accident, but is the existing financial professional that is unhappy where they currently are. For whatever reason, right? I don't judge. It's just, some firms are good fits and some firms are not. So those have been the 3 constituents in the community so far.
So really 3 camps. One is the newbies. The second one is someone who's want to be mentoring through that CFP path, if you will. And the last group is someone who's a advisor already. They wanted to jump to the next step. Now, so out of those 3 groups of folks that you advise or coach, what are the top 3 most issues that you're seeing coming through, or top 3 advices or issues that you're seeing across?
Yeah, man. So let me see if I can do this off the top of my head. I have probably like a list of 20, to be honest, but okay. I'm going to try to go to the top 3.
We won't have time for that, but 3.
Yeah. Top 3 is to CFP or not to CFP.
Okay. That's
a very popular question. I've done a lot of videos that have gotten a lot of traction on the merits of the CFP program and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
We obviously get, is it too late? Because I get a lot of career changers that are like, what are my next steps? Is it too late? Right. Those 40-year-olds and, like, what is it going to take for this? And how exactly would I transition this? Which is a different question than that first one, because they may not even know CFP exists. They may be trying to study for something like SIE or something like that.
Right.
And then with that last group, they ask, when's the right time to leave? When this answer can vary, obviously, but that's generally, how can I start? How can I start my own firm / when is the right time to leave?
That's very interesting. I think that I was chatting with another university's president the other day regarding about CFP. And my comment is oftentimes is that, look, CFP is just like another standard test. You have to remember not everyone can pass the standard test. So there are some barrier to that. But I do think that the training overall is phenomenal, because you are able to become much more educated about how to work with clients. But just keep in mind that don't get too frustrated of that, because of the fact that it is a standard test. It's trying to test the general understanding of it. And so I'm glad to see that you have the 3 top questions surrounding, especially the last one you said, when is time to leave? I would guess if you're thinking about it, you probably should. And it's
You know,
it probably takes
I
time to plan, you know?
yeah, I have different opinions on this. You know, I think, and I
Mhm.
have very controversial opinions around CFP. So, full disclosure, I'm a CFP. However, I didn't get that until after 15 years in the industry. So I
Mhm.
heavily weight
Mhm.
experience over education. I just
Right.
do,
Right.
and especially for career changers, because you know
Sure.
you're talking about a pay cut. You're talking about if you're not single, more than one person
Significant pay
involved in
cut.
the decision. Yeah, like there's a lot of factors going into that.
Yeah.
And do you want to sacrifice the next 4 years of your life in, you know, pretty close to 10 grand?
Yeah.
Like, is that the thing you need to do right now? And sometimes the answer is no. Like, to be honest, most of the
Right.
time the answer is no. Because if you're a career changer, just think about this. You don't know what you don't know. You don't
Right.
know that you want to be client facing doing financial planning. You might not want to do that. So I
Right.
say, if you can, do stuff like the FPA externship or
Right.
any of these other type of programs to
Mhm.
get your feet wet, dip your toe a little bit, see what's out there, join things like Jumpstart, talk with people on the same path, do as much research and reconnaissance as you can, especially at that stage in your life. Now, if you're 18 through 22 and you're already in college, and especially in a financial planning program, finish that and go take the CFP while it's fresh. No doubt. It's a no-brainer to me. And even if you are disposed to that lifestyle and you got the momentum, go ahead and finish your graduate degree. It's never going to be easier than right now. Trust me, I
Yeah,
went back and
that's
got my
true.
graduate degree. It's never going to be easier than right now. So time is on your side with that. What I would say about the third question with that third group is what we don't need in this industry is a lot of disgruntled people starting their own firms just because they can't play team ball. So I always caution people around that, because it's hard. Like, not only do you
It is
need to
very hard.
have the credentials to start your own firm, you also need to be pretty good at the business owner skill part of it.
Oh,
And
yes,
most people don't
definitely.
have that part. So marketing, all that stuff that goes, being able to present yourself and be able to focus on what type of client you want to help and present a succinct message to them so that they understand you from all the noise and distractions and other things trying to get their attention. That's a skill set in itself. And you're
Yes.
trying to master how to, you know, do financial planning. You might not want to do those two at the same time. I'm just saying.
Right. I mean, I totally get that. I was a career changer as well. So everything that you mentioned about, I've touched on, where I was having a very lucrative senior executive job, if you will, and to turn that off and then jump right into a retail independent advisor, that's a significant pay cut. I mean, there's no, I always tell my clients, there's no way I can pay myself that kind of salary back then. It's just not possible because I'm too cheap to do that, right? I don't have that kind of corporate backing to do that. And so, and when I do that conversion into this industry, my very first criteria was to pass the CFP exam. But you know, I was very blessed and very lucky that I somehow ran into a CFP, did my plan, answered the questions. I realized that was the path I want to be on. And then I realized I absolutely loved it. And I know that I need to pass it before I get into it. But you are absolutely right. I was not prepared that the startup phase is so much more work than the technical side, because the technical side you can study, you can pair with someone, you can co-work with another person, but the startup phase of hiring my own coach on marketing side, my own sales coach, none of those things I know what to do. And as a startup company, you need clients. It's not like I remember one of the coaches told me that you have to stop being your own ATM machine, because you're eating your own savings. You got to go out there, right? You have to go out there and network. And that is a skill set that needs to be built over time. It isn't something that was in me, but it took many, many years to get to that point. So I so much appreciated that you mentioned about that. It's not something oftentimes people think through it. And to your point, I did not even have the courage to do enough research But I had somehow very lucky to have enough mentors with me to teach me along the way, and coaches to teach me along the way. So I always encourage people, regardless about what industry you're going to be in, always consider to have mentors and coach, even if you have to pay money for it, it's all going to be worthwhile. So I'm so glad that you're doing this, because I wish that I had those coaches beforehand.
Well, all the people that are
shorten the cycle, if you will.
All the people in the Jumpstart, they know that I preach this kind of stuff. I give them the unvarnished real truth, because you're right. A lot of people go, I wish somebody would have told me this.
Right.
And when you start thinking about the really large, what I would call asymmetrical effect that we can have on a client's outcomes, it's very important that anybody entering this industry is well aware of that. And that the fact that the industry doesn't really prepare people for that was one of the things that, really got under my skin. And so, yeah, I just want this generation. So I strongly believe, and I know we're kind of going a little backwards here, but like from a top down, I strongly believe that really good financial advice has the ability to change family trees. Everybody should have the opportunity to have their family tree changed, which means that we got to get more great professionals into the industry and more of the bad ones out. So
right, and I think that
just math.
I think that over the history, if you will, if you look at over the past history, where we are so much focusing on the technical skill, and I kept telling people today, robot can do that. Go figure out your soft skill. You need to learn how to talk to the client. You need to know how to give advice. You need to listen carefully. There's so many other soft skills you could learn through this process. So let's talk a little bit about your clientele. So in your RIA world, what do you typically do to attract the right clients? So it's kind of several bits and pieces in this question. So who is your right clients, and how do you attract them into your firm?
Yeah, I'll actually give a framework that I've used inside my community a lot, and it's what I use now. I use a kind of a hybrid of it, just because I've been doing it so long now. I think a lot of people start to think, well, maybe they don't, but I think where I start is, what does everybody have in common? There's a book by Drew Eric Whitman called Cashvertising, a really small, easy read, that talks about the 8 biological needs of humans, all humans. And they center around relationship, significance. And of course, I always forget the third one. But the point is that there is this ethos that we're all made up of that causes us to, seek to compete, have our needs met. Just think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think if you start there with whether somebody wants to build retirement account because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses on a very superficial level, you start there, and then we find out that, they have an aging parent that they want to spend more time with, or something like that, right? You just keep on digging, and those questions go deeper and deeper and deeper. So I always start with what everybody has common before I get to what kind of niche do I want to focus on. And I advise that for new advisors. Once you kind of been in the game a little while, referrals take over and all this other kind of stuff, and so you don't have to focus that hard on that. But specifically, the type of people I like to serve in DJH Capital Management, and I say this very unashamedly, is people that value their time over money. That's how I'm wired. I always believe that I can replace money, but I cannot replace time. So if I get somebody that on the first call, they're asking me about, what do you think about the market? And I'm like, look, that's not the type of advisor I am. I've lived that life. I just don't enjoy providing that for clients. There are plenty of advisors that do that, but I really want to focus on people that are trying to make impact and leave legacy. And so those people tend to fit a psychographic of wanting to put leverage in their life by using advice in seeking perspective that they don't otherwise have, or have the time to go figure out. So that's kind of my ideal client. And the way I track them, to be quite honestly, is just, be in their head. Like I've done a lot of research on the way they act, and situational things. I started with medical device and pharmaceutical biotech and just kind of built from there, knowing that a lot of these people pre-COVID, just to give you an example, traveled 75% of the time. They didn't have time to be looking at this stuff and 401k choices. So a trusted advisor that can help them make the bigger, better decision, like you read about at the beginning in the bio, was what they wanted. That's what they valued. And so that's what I played to. And I think it's you when in Rome, you do as the Romans, right? Like as an advisor, you got to kind of do that without sacrificing who you are from an integrity standpoint or an ethics standpoint. But that's what you have to do when you're going to serve your clients. It's almost like a certain point of Dominique I put on in order to know what they're thinking and how they're going to react and what next steps they want to take and what questions they're asking to get them to buy into the way I do it. Because there's, 350,000 people calling themselves financial advisors. They got a lot of choices out there. So how do you attract them? Yeah, well, I mean, it probably is. I mean, if you include like insurance agents and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, bankers.
Yeah. But so yeah, that's kind of the way that I approach client acquisition, new client acquisition. I've been really blessed. The pandemic has handed me a lot of clients that have found me like on websites and old videos and stuff like that. So I haven't had to do a lot of marketing in the last 2 years or so.
Well, I think that at the very beginning of any startup company, you're always going to have that initial time frame to attract clients. And I think that over time, the referrals just kind of take over, or the foundation of your marketing, such as the videos that you mentioned, kind of take over on the autopilot mode, if you will, for that. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. And I think that the conversation that oftentimes people need to really think about is what language do you speak? I'm not talking about different countries' language. I'm talking about from a professional perspective. Your language, how you speak to it, will attract a certain type of clients to you because they understand what you're talking about. And like your example of pharmaceutical and these high-tech type of executives, obviously you speak their language. They understand you. And so I think that's important. That's a lot of internalization to go through. People need to spend time to actually think about that before they say, I just wanted to work with retirees. But what type of retirees, right? There are so many different types. So thank you so much for sharing that.
If I can add, let me, I think you bring up a point that I think needs to be highlighted here, because a lot of this audience will likely go into the field as an employee somewhere versus the 1% of people that actually start their own shingle and the 80% of those that fail. Right. The nuance here that I specifically teach in Jumpstart is just because you're not hanging your own shingle does not mean you don't need to know what you just said, which is how this whole thing works, how marketing attracts the client, how the sales process needs to occur in order for them to become a client, and then the service follow up. If those first two things don't happen, no clients come through the door. Exactly. There are no financial plans to write. So appreciate that process. And when you come into an organization, understand that. I often tell the community members, if you sit down with someone's ADV before an interview, figure out the type of client they work with, and ask questions around how do they attract them, ask questions around first of all, who is your ideal client? How do you attract them? What are some of the challenges you're finding in attracting them? You're going to be different than 99% of people that are doing interviews because you understand how the lifeblood of the firm works. Clients got to come in the door. So I'm very glad you brought that up, because having an understanding of that from an employee standpoint is huge. Is super. Oh,
absolutely. Huge. Yeah. And I think that sometimes that even as an employee, we always have to remember, regardless about what role you play, this is a service industry. Your selling skill in the service industry is so vastly different compared to selling a product. Not to discredit the insurance folks, but they are commodity products, right? It's a different selling skill. skill set, if you will. Not that they're not good, it's just that it's a different approach, a different way of talking to the clients, a different way of digging down deeper about what the client's challenges is, right? And then able to help or not help that particular client. So thank you so much for going a little bit deeper on that. So this next question is really interesting regarding about message getting across to the clients. About effective ways. Can you share some ways that you are able to get the message across to the clients? I think that there are inherent problem with these questions, but I'm going to let you talk about it.
There's a couple of different ways I can go in this, and I think I'm gonna again think about the audience in the most probably tactile or tangible way for them, or at least most valuable. I would say let's talk platforms versus nuances, because nuances in communication, active listening, some of the stuff you need to know about how our brains work, that could take a while to develop, especially for probably the age group that we're talking about. But I often tell people, I'm like, look, I know you want to work in financial services. This is just a little sidebar. I know you want to work in financial services, but if you do an internship, and if you're Gen Z, like I think you are, this is native. This is back of your hand. You can really come in and help advisor that's aging or serves an aging book get on some of the platforms that his ideal client may be hanging out on. So utilize those skills. And so in a very practical sense, an effective way is social media, right? So let's kind of park there for a minute. I cannot say, well, I can, but it still boggles my mind why in 2022, there are still little advisors, relatively speaking, across the space that are utilizing video, like fully leveraging the power of video. I have heard over and over from prospective clients is the reason why I went with you opposed to these other people is because I got to watch 30 or 40 or an hour of your videos, and I felt like I knew you before this call. So there's a, I mean, it's not as great as being in person, but look at the environment we're in now. Everybody doesn't want to be in person. So mastering the skill of video is a worthwhile investment, whether you're doing selfies on your phone and reversing it so you can get the best view on that back camera for iPhone users, or if you're practicing looking into the camera and using your hands and, not just being this, toad on the log type of deal, like all those things are really, really powerful. Cause like I can count on two hands how many in-person meetings I've had in the 5 years that I've ran my business, almost 6. I do it all virtual, basically. And that is the expectation. So effective ways. Yeah. The effective ways of, like when we talk about the planning profession going forward, this is something people need to get used to. Like they really just need to. And if you can master this skill and seamlessly integrate it, that's the key. Seamlessly integrate it into the workflow and the experience that the client is paying you for. Oh yes, that's a top skill, and that will be probably one of the more effective ways. I don't know many clients in this environment that are like, yeah, I'd rather meet in person than virtually. That I'm just not hearing that.
Well,
not in my firm and not across firms.
Yeah. Plus you have all these videos available for them to sample. So of course they're going to be feeling like they already know you before they meet you. And they get to see, and again, that's where I mentioned the language you speak match what they're speaking. And that's almost like a self-selecting. I think clients are very smart. I always tell my students or anyone I coach, clients are very smart. They're extremely smart. They pick you for a reason. And if you give them that available channels, such as video available to them, they are going to take advantage of that, making sure that when they are in front of you in the meeting, in the videos, they are prepared to speak with you. So thank you so much for emphasizing that video is just one of the way that is currently effective working with clients, and that will change. Maybe hologram is coming, and I know it's here, that we have to adapt and change and we have to meet where a client is, if you will. So thank you.
Let me throw this in, because you make a very interesting point in that video is the let's call it medium du jour.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think the adaptability of knowing what medium works for your client base, because if I'm talking about, I serve all baby boomers, that might not be the case. They might still want to meet in person, right? So, your client makeup has to do with that too, your client demographic. What I would also underlie is some of the things that I kind of hesitated and hedged on at the beginning of this question, which is really just a bedside matter of how you treat your clients. Like I've always told, I have 3 adult children. I've always told them that the pure definition of frustration is going to be the difference between expectation and what actually happens. So if your client comes in the door, a prospective client comes in the door, and they expect one thing and you deliver something else, maybe really lack of communication, because it's all on you at that standpoint, because they're just coming in the door. You have all of the latitude to let them know this is how it's going to be, and what you can expect. If they leave you, or they're frustrated, or the service level is not there, that's on you, right? So we have all the propensity to kind of set the direction of where that can go. And all I'm saying is, like, do that up front, and you will see the fruit of that. If you don't, you're also going to probably get the negative consequences of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Setting those expectations absolutely does make a big difference there.
Yeah.
Now, we do know that there are obviously 300 some plus universities that has undergraduate program in financial planning, either major or minor. So we have a lot of people going through the financial planning as a study. So we do know that there are quite a bit of folks coming through. But what are some of the ways that you do see the next generation financial professionals? How can we better prepare them into the industry, if you will? Because what you learn in the classroom might be one thing, but what you are out there servicing clients might be another thing. Could you talk a little bit about, so how do we best prepare them?
Yeah, this is a really great question. So I have a framework that I talk about, very similar to a mutual friend of ours. She talks about the continuum of financial care. I expanded that thought because I'm like looking at it from both ends of the perspective, from consumers of financial services as well as providers of financial services. And I would say, like, let's just use an analogy. Let's say there's 15 steps from financial, illiteracy to economic empowerment. Our industry has been notoriously, concentrating on the first, or the last rather, 2 or 3 steps, because that's where all the wealth is, right? That's where the fees are made. But the majority of America, is in the first 13 steps, first 12 steps. And so I think the first first takeaway for this audience is probably to realize that continuum exists. And clients are going to want to intersect you where they are. And so you can choose whether you want to be a financial educator, counselor, coach, advisor, planner, therapist. There's a lot of seats to fill depending on where the client is, and how you integrate those different aspects. Because here's the other nuance: they can be interchanged as nouns or verbs, right? So for instance, I kind of think that the next evolution of this industry, which is already happening, there's a more of a marriage and integration of financial coaching as a verb with financial advice. Because people just don't need you. Like you said, it's commoditized. Investment management is commoditized. Like, nobody needs me to manage their money, really. I mean, I know there's advisors that go and say this is a value proposition, but it's just not. It's just not anymore. There's study after study that proves that. What clients really come to you when they say they want you to manage their money is they want you to help them make better decisions. That's what they're saying. And they want to use their money and the financial capital that they exchanged for human capital to do that, because they realize the essence of time in relation to whatever constraint or goal that they're trying to meet. That's what they're really saying. You have to understand that, because they're going to come in there and say, I want you to manage my money. So that's the kind of stuff that like we're teaching in Jumpstart Coaching Lab, because clients are going to say a lot of things. And Steve Sims, one of my favorite authors, he talks about asking why 3 times, because that third why is when you really get to what they really want. And so preparing this generation is awareness of that, right? And understanding that you don't have to be, you know, start to finish a financial planner your whole life. You can start as a financial coach. You can sample different things along the way, depending on the type of people you work with. You know, I started at a hedge fund in the back office. I moved to real estate and took a break. I went back and got my 7 and 66 and built a book. The broker dealer went broke. I had to find a job and work for an RIA for 6 years and traded muni desks, traded munis with, you know, the Goldman Sachs and the Morgan Stanleys of the world. And then I started my own firm. So like I've sampled, if you will. And I tell people, don't be afraid to do that. That it's going to make you a better planner overall, because everybody won't be client facing. It's just not enough clients to go around. It's not enough people that everybody can have their own 100 clients. Like this, the world doesn't work like that. So
right. I totally get that. And I absolutely love the idea of sampling. And I think that there are many organizations like the FPA, Extranet, you know, internship. There are many opportunities to do that. And that word sampling is so right, because without seeing it, you probably don't know what to expect. And it really, there are so many other factors to it. All right, I wanted to watch the time a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a question that I get asked so many times as well, but I figure you probably talked about this better than I do. Tell us about RIA. How did you launch? And I know that there's so many mechanical things out of it. And you probably talked about this earlier. There's so many things you need to check before you get to this point. So give us just a high level of the difference between the RIA, being your own boss, and things like that.
Yeah. Shameless plug for my YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist on advice for existing financial professionals, in which I have a few videos in which I go into this in a little bit more detail than what I'm going to cover right here for time's sake. But
we'll
at the beginning,
we'll post that within this video as well.
Okay, cool. So at a very high level, there are a couple of ways that you can enter this industry. You can go the SEC/FINRA route, or you can be independent. So I think the dividing line is whether you're going to be a registered representative of a broker dealer, or whether you're going to be an independent advisor representative. So, and obviously, if you're going to be an independent advisor representative, you have to be one of a registered investment advisory firm. So those are the two hats that you can kind of go down. Now, probably the better value, rather than talking about how I started my firm, is deciding on which one makes the most sense for you. So there's way more seats on the bus with you being a registered representative, because everybody's a broker dealer. Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity, the list goes on and on and on. And they hire tons of people every year. And so, but on the RIA side, you know, a big RIA can be considered managing 300 million in 400 or 500 households with, you know, a staff of 20. But they're not going to be hiring 20 people every year. They might hire 1 or 2 people every couple of years. So although everybody wants to sit on that RIA side and fee only and fee based and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of great opportunities on the broker dealer side to get your feet wet and get experience and start talking to clients and figure out what this is like and all this other kind of stuff, and then move over. I think a lot of people shun those bank jobs, if you will, the Chases and all that kind of stuff. But those are actually really good programs. Just candidly, I was speaking to a friend with Morgan Stanley, and they have an exit program. They have a financial advisor development program that is 2 years paid. So now, yeah, you have to jump some hurdles to get in there, but like once you're in, they show you every part of the business and set you up with one of their teams. So you just have to do your research. You really have to do your research. I would say, I will go back to what we talked about earlier, Dr. Jen. It's not for the faint of heart to start your own firm. And there's not a lot of career opportunities because it's just a small amount of RIAs than there are broker-dealers.
And I'm on the same page with you in terms of take advantage of big firms. I call them the big box store. They've got money and budget and resources to do that training. Go through that experience, get trained, get your feet wet, understand the industry based on that, and focus on where you want to go. Because through those training, you'll find your way into something. We just don't know what that is yet.
Well, and what I would say, you're going to find probably a person,
right,
like a mentor, a couple of mentors,
right,
and that's probably going to be the most valuable to you. So yeah, I agree totally.
Absolutely, even a subgroups of that potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so we've spent quite a bit of time talk about a lot of things. If you were to just give one advice for who is going to be new to this industry or career changers or already in the, what would that be if it's just one advice?
Anybody that's on this call that's in my group, they already know what I'm about to say. So it's my 9-letter framework, 3 words: find your why, which will lead you to your who, which will inevitably lead you to your how. So everybody starting this industry, into this industry, or trying to get to the next level in this industry needs to know why they're doing this. Period. End of story. Hard stop. You have to. This is one of the hardest, but greatly beneficial if you succeed, jobs, like fulfillment, financial rewards, the whole 9. But if you're a little lost on who you're trying to serve or why you're trying to serve them, it could be, a little disconcerting to say the least. So you got to find your why, get really centered and focused on that. When you find your why, it's going to lead you to a who, right? These mentors, these sponsors, these people that will come to the rescue and like maybe coach, maybe a paid coach. But at the end of the day, these are people that you can look at the path that they took and you can avoid the mistakes they did through the advice or really the leadership or the mentorship they're showing you, right? They can be a hero. Like Seth Godin says that you don't have to meet all your heroes. Sometimes you can just, read their books and see their stuff and you'd be like, oh, that's the way I'm going to go. And then mimicking or copying that will lead you to your how. It will give you a blueprint for how you should probably go about stuff. I had Nancy Langley Jones on my podcast several episodes back, and she wrote a book, So You Want to Be a Financial Planner. Excellent resource.
Right.
If you don't read this, if you don't, if it's a $25 purchase, and if you don't read that thing cover to cover, you're doing yourself a disservice, because she's got story after story after story of people that have walked the same path as most people that pick up that book are walking. So it's just stuff like that to simplify the journey and to work smarter, not harder. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, Dom. That's very wise advice, right? Find your why, and comes next your who, and then figure out the why, the how. That's thank you so much for doing that. We're so glad to have you in our Next Gen Mentoring Forum. What an incredible, informative information. So thank you so much. I also wanted to just plug in a little bit about thank you for California Lutheran University School of Management Financial Planning Program for sponsoring today's Next Gen Mentoring Forum. California Lutheran University School of Management offers MBA in financial planning, helps financial advisors pursue leadership position and to grow their financial planning practice by deploying advanced financial planning techniques, effective communication, streamlined practice management, as well as leveraging that fintech. So if you or someone that you know that might benefit from the California Lutheran University MBA in Financial Planning program, please have them sign up for our info session. And our next info session is actually on February the 24th at 3 p.m. Now, our next Gen Mentoring Forum is on February the 8th, 2022 at 2 p.m. And many of you probably, if you don't know her already, I totally would invite you to come and join the session. Angela Rebufo, who has been a trailblazer for this industry, have won several awards representing women in this business. And we are going to talk about how does grit help financial professionals succeed in the financial services industry. And we look forward to having you soon. Be safe and be well. And thank you, Dom.